He believed she was nothing more than another faceless server, blending into the background of the opulent dining room. Little did he know that when the city's most feared syndicate boss hurled an insult about her body in flawless Arabic, convinced she would never understand, the plus-sized waitress would whirl around and brand him a coward in his own hidden tongue. That single mistake would change everything. The ambient lighting inside the Gilded Lily was designed to make its ultra-wealthy patrons look flawless, casting a warm golden glow over mahogany tables and crystal chandeliers. Located in the beating heart of Manhattan, the restaurant served as a sanctuary for the elite. For Serena Quinn, it was simply a battlefield where the tips paid the rent. Serena was not the typical waitress hired by Harold Prescott, the notoriously strict floor manager. The standard uniform was a tight, unforgiving black dress cut for a specific waif-like figure. Serena, however, was beautifully and unapologetically plus-sized. She carried her curves with an innate confidence, her dark hair pinned back in a sharp twist, her lips painted a defiant crimson. Harold had hired her because she possessed something the other servers lacked: absolute, unshakable composure. She could handle Wall Street billionaires and arrogant celebrities without batting an eyelash. But tonight, the atmosphere had shifted from opulent to oppressive. The front doors opened, and the usual hum of polite conversation died in the throats of the patrons. Damian Kane had arrived. Damian was a ghost story whispered in boardrooms and dark alleys across New York. As head of the Kane Syndicate, his legitimate real estate businesses were merely a polished veneer over an empire built on extortion, smuggling, and blood. He was a striking man, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that spoke of old money. His face was a study in cold, sharp angles, his dark eyes scanning the room with the predatory calm of a man who owned everything he looked at. Flanked by 3 heavily built associates, Damian was escorted straight to the private alcove in the back, a secluded table shielded by velvet ropes and towering ferns. "Serena," Harold hissed, grabbing her elbow as she passed the bar. His usually ruddy face had gone pale, a fine sheen of sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Table 9. The Kane Party. Do not make eye contact. Do not linger. Pour the wine, take the order, and get out of their breathing space." "It's just another table, Harold," Serena replied calmly, balancing a silver tray with a bottle of ridiculously expensive Barolo. "It is not just another table," Harold snapped. "That man could buy this building just to burn it down. Be careful." Serena smoothed the front of her apron, drew a deep breath, and approached the alcove. As she stepped past the velvet rope, the air grew noticeably colder. Damian sat at the head of the table, nursing a tumbler of scotch. His right-hand man, Silas, sat to his left, scrolling through a burner phone. "Good evening, gentlemen," Serena said, her voice smooth and professional. "Can I start you off with our chef's tasting menu, or would you prefer to order à la carte?" Damian didn't look at her. He kept his eyes fixed on the low-lit candle in the center of the table. Silas, however, glanced up, a sneer playing on his lips. As Serena leaned over to pour the wine for him, her hip brushed lightly against the edge of the oversized leather chair. It was a minor, unavoidable contact given the tight spacing, but the heavy wine glass clinked sharply against the bottle. A single drop of dark red wine fell, staining the pristine white tablecloth. Silas clicked his tongue in exaggerated annoyance. Damian finally raised his eyes. They were obsidian black, entirely devoid of warmth. He looked Serena up and down, his gaze lingering on her full hips and soft waist, with a mixture of aristocratic disdain and raw irritation. Without breaking eye contact, he leaned slightly toward Silas and spoke, not in English, not in Italian, but in rapid, guttural Arabic. It was a language he had mastered during years negotiating illegal arms deals in the Middle East, a tongue he used in public when he wanted his inner circle to understand and everyone else to remain in the dark. "Look at this," Damien murmured in Arabic, his voice a dark, mocking rumble. "She eats more than she serves. A clumsy, heavy cow blocking the walkway. Get her out of my sight before she breaks the furniture." Silas chuckled, a low, cruel sound, already preparing to wave Serena away like a bothersome insect. They expected her to bow her head. They expected her to apologize for the spilled drop of wine, completely ignorant of the vicious insult that had just been hurled at her body. They were wrong. Before her father passed away, he had been a senior civilian contractor for the Department of Defense, stationed in Cairo and later Beirut. Serena had spent much of her childhood and adolescence immersed in the culture, studying the dialects until she spoke Arabic with the sharp, street-level fluency of a native. She didn't just understand the language, she felt it. Serena froze. The silver tray trembled for a fraction of a second before her grip turned to iron. A hot, blinding wave of indignation crashed over her, completely overriding Harold's desperate warnings. She slowly set the bottle of Barolo down on the table. The heavy thud against the wood made Silas jump. Serena squared her shoulders and looked down at Damien Kane. The air in the alcove seemed to vacuum itself out. "A real man," she said, her Arabic ringing out clear, sharp, and flawlessly pronounced, cutting through the jazz music in the background. "Does not need to borrow another language to insult a woman's body. Only a pathetic coward hides behind words he thinks his victim cannot understand." Silas's jaw dropped so fast it practically unhinged. The burner phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Damien's reaction was entirely different. The bored, aristocratic disdain vanished, replaced by a shock so profound it paralyzed his features. His dark eyes widened, locking onto Serena's fierce, blazing gaze. For several long, agonizing seconds, nobody moved. The silence was deafening. The two heavily armed guards near the ferns instinctively reached inside their jackets, but Damien raised a single finger, stopping them cold. "You!" Damien started, his voice a rough whisper, now in English. "You speak Arabic." "If my presence offends you, sir," Serena continued smoothly in English, her tone dripping with ice, "I will gladly have another server take over your table. Enjoy your evening." Without waiting for his dismissal, she turned on her heel and walked out of the alcove, head high, posture immaculate. Behind her, the silence of the Mafia boss was louder than a gunshot. In the days that followed, Serena waited for the sky to fall. She jumped every time her apartment buzzer rang. She looked over her shoulder on the walk to the subway. You didn't publicly humiliate the head of the Kane syndicate and walk away unscathed, but the days slipped by, and the streets of Manhattan remained ordinary. Before long, Serena had convinced herself she had gotten lucky. Perhaps a man like Damien Kane was too arrogant to acknowledge the incident. Perhaps he had bigger problems than a loud-mouthed waitress. She was wrong again. Late that night, the restaurant was winding down, the final patrons finishing their desserts. Serena was in the back room tallying receipts when the kitchen door swung open violently. Emily, a fellow waitress, burst in, face drained of color. "Serena," Emily gasped, clutching her chest. "Harold says you need to come out to the floor now. I'm off the clock soon." "Emily, what's wrong?" "The restaurant is empty," Emily said, voice shaking. "Completely empty. Some guys in suits came in, paid everyone's checks, told the customers to leave, and locked the front doors." A cold dread coiled in Serena's stomach. She dropped her pen, untied her apron, and pushed past Emily into the main dining room. The scene was surreal. The Gilded Lily, normally alive with sound and movement, was completely deserted. The only person near the bar was Harold, looking as though he might faint. And sitting alone at a table in the exact center of the room was Damien Kane. He wasn't flanked by his usual entourage. Silas stood by the front door, arms crossed, locking the deadbolt. Damien wore a tailored black shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, looking entirely too comfortable in the eerily silent space. When he saw Serena, he gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit, Serena," he said. His voice was a low, commanding baritone that sent a shiver down her spine. Serena stood her ground. "How do you know my name?" "I know a great deal more than your name," Damien replied, leaning back. "Sit. I am not accustomed to repeating myself, and I'm not accustomed to being held hostage at my place of work," Serena shot back, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She walked over, pulled out the chair, and sat opposite him, spine straight, refusing to shrink under his intense gaze. Up close, he was even more intimidating. There was a dangerous magnetism to him, a raw, coiled energy that made the air between them feel electric. He studied her face, his dark eyes tracing the curve of her cheek, the defiant set of her jaw. "You have courage, Serena," Damien finally said. "Stupid, reckless courage. Do you know what usually happens to people who call me a coward in front of my men? I assume they end up at the bottom of the Hudson," Serena replied flatly. "If you're here to kill me, Mr. Kane, doing it in a restaurant with security cameras seems rather messy for a man of your reputation." Damien let out a low, rough laugh, genuine amusement, not cruelty. "I have no intention of harming you," he said, leaning forward, the amusement fading into sharp, businesslike intensity. "In fact, I am here to offer you a job." Serena stared, certain she had misheard. "A job? You cleared out a 5-star restaurant to offer a waitress a job?" "I don't need a waitress," Damien said softly. "I need a translator and a negotiator." He reached inside his jacket, pulled out a thick manila folder, and tossed it onto the table. It slid to a stop inches from her hands. "My organization is expanding," he explained, voice dropping an octave. "We are negotiating a highly sensitive, highly lucrative supply route with a faction based out of Alexandria. They are proud, traditional, and deeply paranoid. My usual translators are inadequate. They speak the language, but miss the nuance. They don't grasp the cultural respect required to seal the deal." "And you think I do?" Serena asked, bewildered. "Your accent the other night," Damien murmured, leaning closer. "It wasn't textbook. It was authentic. You lived in the Middle East, Beirut and Cairo, for much of your childhood and adolescence." Damien nodded slowly. "Perfect. I need you to accompany me to a meeting. You will translate for me. You will read the room. You will tell me when they are lying, and you will ensure my words carry the exact level of respect and underlying threat I intend." "You are out of your mind," Serena scoffed at, pushing her chair back. "I'm a civilian. I serve overpriced pasta to rich snobs. I am not getting involved in Mafia politics. Hire a professional." "I cannot use a professional," Damien countered, eyes hardening. "Anyone known in my circles is a liability. I need a ghost, someone completely unconnected to my world, someone they won't suspect of being anything more than a pretty hired assistant." He paused, letting his eyes drag over her curves again, but this time there was no disdain. There was an unsettling heat. "Though you are far more than that, aren't you?" Serena stood. "My answer is no. I'm leaving." "Sit down, Serena," Damien said. The gentle amusement was gone. It was a direct, terrifying order. Serena froze, but didn't sit. "You said you weren't going to hurt me." "I am not going to hurt you," Damien agreed, tapping a long finger against the folder. "But I cannot speak for what the Irish syndicate will do to your younger brother." The blood drained from Serena's face. She stared at the folder, a sick feeling rising in her throat. "Nolan," Damien said, speaking her brother's name like a judge passing sentence. 22 years old. with a crippling addiction to underground poker. He currently owes $50,000 to a crew-run item Sullivan, a man who is notoriously impatient. Nolan missed his payment. Sullivan's men are looking for him to break his legs. After that, they will likely come looking for you, his only living relative, to collect the rest. Serena grabbed the folder and flipped it open. Inside were photographs of her brother walking out of a dingy basement club in Queens, copies of betting slips, and a detailed ledger of his debts. Her hands shook violently. She had known Nolan was in trouble. He had been asking to borrow money for weeks. But she had no idea the hole was this deep. "You bastard," she whispered, voice cracking. "Did you set him up?" "I don't play games with children," Damien replied coldly. "His debts are his own. I simply have good informants, but I can make this problem disappear." Damien stood slowly. He was a foot taller than her, and his proximity was overwhelming. He smelled of cedarwood, expensive tobacco, and power. "Help me close this deal with the Alexandrians. Act as my voice. Ensure I am not cheated. Do this one thing for me, and I will wipe Nolan's debt clean. I will pay Sullivan off myself. Your brother lives, and you walk away free." Serena looked up into Damien's dark, fathomless eyes. She hated him in that moment, hated his arrogance, his power, the way he had effortlessly backed her into a corner. But as she thought of Nolan, her foolish, desperate brother, she knew she had no choice. "If I do this," she said, voice shaking slightly but chin raised in defiance, "you never speak to me again. You never come near my brother. And you never set foot in this restaurant again." Damien stared down at her, a strange, complex emotion flickering across his stoic features. He reached out, warm, calloused fingers gently brushing her jawline. Serena flinched, but he didn't pull away immediately. "We have a deal, Serena," he whispered. The trap was sprung. Serena had just traded a life of serving wine for a seat at the devil's table, completely unaware that the Mafia boss had no intention of ever letting her walk away. The black armored SUV cut through the rain-slicked streets of the Brooklyn Navy Yards, heavy tires hissing against the wet asphalt. Serena sat rigid in the back seat, hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore a tailored midnight blue pantsuit provided by Damien's personal tailor just hours earlier. It was meant to act as psychological armor, yet beneath the expensive fabric she felt entirely exposed. Damien sat beside her, a silent, imposing shadow in the dim interior. The silence between them was suffocating. She glanced at him, noting the hard lines of his jaw and the relaxed way he held a heavy suppressed pistol on his knee. He was a man heading to a routine business meeting. She was a woman stepping blindly into the abyss. "Are you afraid, Serena?" he asked suddenly, voice a low rumble over the engine, though he did not turn his head. "I am terrified," she admitted honestly, voice trembling despite her efforts to control it. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It keeps you alive," Damien replied, finally turning his dark eyes toward her. "Just remember the plan. Translate exactly what Tariq says, word for word. But more importantly, listen for what he does not say. Listen for hesitation, shifts in tone. You are my radar tonight." The SUV rolled to a heavy stop outside a desolate shipping warehouse. Rain hammered against the roof in a relentless rhythm. It was time. The interior was cavernous and damp, smelling of salt water, rust, and old dried blood. A single glaring halogen lamp hung from the high ceiling, casting harsh shadows over a large wooden crate that served as a makeshift negotiation table. Standing on the far side of the light were 5 men. The leader, Tariq, was a slender, elegant figure with slicked-back silver hair and eyes like shattered glass. Damien stepped confidently into the light, gesturing subtly for Serena to stand slightly behind his right shoulder. Silas and 2 other armed guards fanned out to secure the perimeter. Tariq smiled, a thin, venomous expression that never reached his eyes, and began speaking in rapid, formal Arabic. "Welcome, Mr. Kane. It is a profound honor to finally conduct our mutual business face-to-face in this city." Serena translated seamlessly, keeping her voice steady and devoid of emotion. Damien replied in English, dictating his strict terms for the illegal weapons shipment, tone leaving no room for negotiation. The back and forth was a delicate, dangerous dance of power, greed, and posturing. After a tense period, the atmosphere shifted. Tariq's tone dropped, becoming softer, more rhythmic, almost musical. He spoke of mutual respect, shared enemies, and long-term profits. But Serena, listening with the ear of a trained linguist, caught the sudden change. He switched from formal educated dialect to a highly specific regional slang used exclusively by coastal smugglers from Alexandria. He was no longer speaking to Damien. He was giving an execution order to his hidden men. "The shipment is fully ready," Tariq said smoothly, eyes locked on Damien's. "We can finalize the financial transfer tonight, but we require a gesture of good faith from your side." The hidden meaning woven into the vowels was entirely different. Serena's blood ran cold. Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. She leaned close to Damien's ear, breath hitching. "He just told his men on the catwalk to lock the heavy doors," she whispered rapidly, panic lacing her tone. "It is an ambush, Damien. They do not have the shipment. They are here to execute you and take over the Eastern Territory." Damien did not flinch. He did not look up at the menacing shadows above. His expression remained a mask of carved stone. "Tell Tariq," he said in English, voice a low, terrifying rumble, "that I am fresh out of good faith." Before Serena could translate, the warehouse exploded into deafening chaos. Damien moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed her firmly by the waist and threw her behind a massive steel shipping container, just as automatic gunfire rained down from the hidden catwalk. The roar of bullets filled the cavernous space. Cement dust, shattered glass, and sparks showered down. Serena hit the cold concrete hard, covering her ears, trembling as the world tore itself apart. Damien returned fire, face a mask of cold fury. He was no longer a polished businessman. He was a ruthless warlord defending his empire. "Stay down!" he roared over the chaos. Silas and the Kane guards returned fire, trying to pin the snipers behind rusty support beams. Tariq had vanished into the shadows, elegant demeanor replaced by cowardly retreat. Serena pressed her back against the cold metal, breath coming in ragged gasps. She had never been near a gunfight before. The reality was terrifying, a brutal overload of explosive noise, acrid smoke, and the metallic tang of blood. A stray bullet sparked off the corner of their barricade, sending hot metal fragments raining over her shoulder. She cried out, clutching her arm. Damien dropped to one knee beside her, dark eyes wide with sudden alarm. "Are you hit?" he demanded, gripping her shoulder with frantic urgency. "No," she gasped, tears stinging her eyes. "Just sparks. I'm okay." His grip was iron-strong, yet strangely protective. In the middle of deadly chaos, surrounded by enemies, he was single-mindedly focused on her survival. "Silas!" Damien barked into the radio on his collar. "Suppressing fire on the east wall. We're moving to the loading bay exit now." He turned back to Serena, face inches from hers. The scent of gunpowder and cedarwood cologne enveloped her. "Listen to me, Serena. When I give the signal, run straight to the exit. Do not stop. Do not look back. I will cover you." "I can't outrun bullets," she cried, panic threatening to consume her. "You won't have to," he promised, voice an unbreakable anchor. "I will not let them touch you. Do you trust me?" It was an absurd question. He was a Mafia boss who had blackmailed her into this nightmare. Yet in his eyes, she saw absolute resolve. He was putting his own life on the line to ensure she survived his mistake. Serena swallowed hard, nodded, and prepared to run. "Go!" Damien shouted. He stepped out from cover, unleashing a relentless barrage toward the catwalk. Serena ran, pushing her legs as hard as she could, expensive shoes slipping on wet concrete. The exit glowed like a beacon a long distance away. The roar of gunfire was deafening, yet miraculously, nothing touched her. Damien's covering fire suppressed the enemy completely. She burst through the loading bay doors into the freezing, rain-swept night. A moment later, Damien emerged, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a hidden extraction vehicle in the alley. They threw themselves into the armored sedan, and the car tore away into the darkness. The safe house was a lavish, heavily fortified penthouse overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline, a stark contrast to the bloody warehouse they had escaped. Serena sat curled on a velvet sofa, blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring into a roaring fireplace. Damien stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand. He had shed his ruined suit jacket. His white shirt was stained with dirt and soot, yet he looked entirely unbothered. "You saved my life tonight, Serena," he said quietly. "If you hadn't caught that dialect shift, I would be lying dead on that warehouse floor." Tariq played a clever game, but he underestimated the waitress. Serena looked up, exhaustion warring with lingering anger. "I did what I had to do to survive, Damien. I held up my end of the bargain. Now it's time for you to hold up yours." Damien walked to a polished mahogany desk, picked up a thick envelope, and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Nolan's debts are fully paid," he stated firmly. "Sullivan will never look in his direction again. Your brother is completely free, and as promised, so are you." Serena stared at the envelope, a profound wave of relief washing over her. The nightmare was over. She could return to her quiet life, to being an invisible server pouring wine for arrogant billionaires. But as she looked at Damien bathed in firelight, she realized something terrifying. The thought of walking out that door and never seeing him again felt strangely hollow. She stood, letting the blanket fall, and picked up the envelope. "Thank you," she said softly. She turned toward the door, heart aching with a confusing sorrow. Before she could take 3 steps, Damien moved. In a blur, he stood directly in front of her, blocking her path, dark eyes burning with intense, consuming fire. "I said you were free to go, Serena," he murmured, voice dropping to a rough, hypnotic whisper as he stepped closer. "But I never said I would let you walk away." Serena's breath hitched. "We had a deal, Damien." "I am a selfish, ruthless man, Serena," he confessed, reaching out to gently trace the soft curve of her cheek. "I have built an empire on blood and fear. But tonight I found something far more valuable than territory or weapons. I found a queen who can stand by my side in the darkest of storms. You are brilliant, fierce, and incredibly beautiful. I cannot let you go back to a life that does not deserve you. You belong in my world now," he declared softly, leaning down until his lips were a fraction of an inch from hers. "Stay with me. Rule this city with me. Let me give you everything you have ever been denied." Serena looked up into the eyes of the most dangerous man in New York, a man who had insulted her, threatened her, and ultimately saved her. The sensible part of her brain screamed to run. But the fierce, untamed part of her heart, the part that had boldly called a Mafia boss a coward in Arabic, leaned forward. She closed the final distance, capturing his lips in a fiery, desperate kiss that sealed her fate forever. The plus-sized waitress was gone. The queen of the Kane Syndicate had officially arrived. Did you love this thrilling Mafia romance? If Serena's fierce bravery and Damien's dark, protective energy kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to share this story with your fellow romance readers and subscribe for more intense, dramatic, twist-filled audio stories. Leave a comment below telling us what you think Damien will do next.